Oh, good morning, men. How are you this morning? Or this afternoon, or even this evening, depending on when you're watching this. I decided to take a stroll along the beach this morning, and I was thinking about last Sunday's message from Pastor Nathan. And his message was all about the new beginnings, the old Adam passing away, the new Adam, Jesus himself, coming on the scene, completing the work of redemption. And I got to thinking about the old and the new. And as I was driving in to work this morning, from my house to the beach here, we pass about 5 different cafes. And as we're driving to work this morning, we realized that 2 out of the 5 are permanently gone. Only 2 of them are actually still open, serving people. We realized we're in a transition time. We're going from the old into the new. Here's the issue though. When there is a transition from the old and the new, sometimes we get stuck in the old. And it leads to things like depression. It leads to things like despair, anger, especially with us guys. We tend to react like that when things come to an end. When we feel like there is a transition. You know, I can't speak to those of you who may be suffering with depression because I can't really identify with depression. I've never been a person that has dealt with depression. Oh sure, I go through times where I feel sorry for myself. Who doesn't? But I rarely get caught up in depression. I can't even remember a time when I actually got caught up in depression until recently. When I've come close, and I still admit I don't know what real depression is like, but I sure realized I've come close to it. I've had situations in my life with relatives and with this coronavirus and with things going on around the world where I've reached that point to where I say, what's the point? And you start getting into this, for lack of a better word, feeling sorry for yourself. And then that line crosses into depression. And I know there's people that suffer with clinical depression, and hey, it's a real serious thing, and I would never make light of it. But a lot of times, depression simply comes from not being able to handle a change, a transition, the old closing and the new opening. You know, going back to the restaurants that are closed, you know, there's going to come a time when I drive to work and there'll be new places there. There'll be new restaurants or new businesses, and it's going to go on. And the thing about the old closing is it gives an opportunity for the new to come along, as hard as the old is. There's a whole nation that dealt with this, that couldn't transition from the old to the new. And that, of course, is the Jewish nation that didn't accept Jesus because they were trapped in the old. And they couldn't move to that new promise, that New Testament, that there is new things ahead. And for my devotion today, I just want to speak to us about that. Don't get caught in the past. I want to read to you from Philippians, where Paul addresses that for himself. And he's talking about running the good race, fighting the fight. And he's kind of realizing that he's coming towards the end of that. And he says in Philippians 3, starting in verse 12, he says, "Not that I have already obtained all this." Winning the prize, fighting the good fight is what he's referring to. "Or have already received, or arrived at my goal. But I press on to take a hold of that for which Jesus took a hold of me." Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it. But one thing I do, and here's the key: forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenwards in Jesus Christ. How do we put the past, how do we put change, things we're going through into context? And that is the key word, context. We use the past for context for the new, but we don't dwell in the past or try to take the past into the future. We need to let go of the past. We need to let go of the difficulties, the struggles. Yes, we need to have them in context because they will define the new. They will be the light of the new that shines against the darkness of the old. Do you understand? History needs to be kept for the context of it, so that we can define the new. But the new, especially in Christ, is a complete absence of the old. It's putting the old aside, moving on to the new, and embracing the new. Okay? If your favorite restaurant is closed and down the road a new one opens, do you dwell on the old restaurant that was there forever? Do you mourn that? Oh no. Or can you embrace the new one that'll be there someday? Can you embrace that and enjoy that? And see, that's an example of the same thing. In Christ, we need to embrace that new promise that He's made, that we have a new life, we have a new beginning. And we need to let go of any of the old stuff that was there before Christ, or even the stuff that we've dealt with in the past. We need to let that go. We need to move on into the future. And if we can do that, we can overcome depression. We can overcome anxiety. If we look to what Christ has saved us for, what Christ has redeemed us for, and move with Him onto that New Testament, that new promise, that we have a new life with Him everlasting. Those are my thoughts today as I was walking on the beach. I hope they blessed you. God bless you. See you next week.